Chinese elm, they're an invasive plant. They were brought in with the nursery trade. They choke out the native plants.
A chance to see how two ASU students are partnering together, combining science and robotics.
Bufflegrass. It's not native, a dangerous fire hazard, and can spread aggressively, killing other native plants. Brenton Scott, an ASU PhD student who studies bufflegrass, has teamed up with Benjamin Stinnett, an ASU research assistant in robotics, to utilize a drone for their research.
So it's not only going to be a less effort on our part, but also give us some very high resolution imagery for other types of analyses.
Before, using other methods increased the spread of bufflegrass seeds, or didn't give them clear enough images. Now with drones, they are able to take pictures like these to map out the exact growth of bufflegrass, being a silent eye in the sky.
A project like this, we feel like we can really help.
The removal of invasive plant species and the planting of a variety of trees donated by the city of Davenport.
In this forested area, there are a lot of undesirables, such as mulberry, which is hanging over us. There are silver maples.
You're fed up with an invasive plant species, thinking they could just come into our state and just grow wherever they want. That's right. You form a gang. And that's exactly what the students in Lauren Elliott's Introduction to Biology class did. They formed the Guardian Gang, educating themselves and others on non-evasive or evasive vegetation. And what's a quilt? A bunch of random patterned squares sewn together? Or perhaps it's a gift of warmth, of comfort and healing, a source of remembrance of a chapter in one's life. Students in Margie Erlinson's fashion design course applied the principles of sewing to purposely tailor a unique quilt specifically designed for those receiving care.
Surrounding the village and they repaired the rock walls surrounding the village and helped control invasive plant species. After that, the students swim, snorkel, cliff jump, and explore the amazing area. Now, here they repaired the rock walls surrounding the village and helped control invasive plant species.
The scientists are counting the numbers of the invasive plant Saharan mustard. It is one of several invading plant species causing widespread change to southwest deserts. California. The scientists are counting the numbers of the invasive plant Saharan mustard. It is one of several invading plant species causing widespread change to southwest deserts. California. The scientists are counting the numbers of the invasive plant Saharan mustard.
It's an invasive plant species. It's an invasive plant species.
Mr. Muscles, come on.
Because it's being detrimental to the native species to this area, not allowing them to grow, and we're just trying to give everything that's actually from here a chance.
But all this physical work does have its benefits, both for the scouts.
It gets my muscles big.
Learn how you can help fight invasive plant pests and diseases by going to hungrypest.com. In Washington, D.C., for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, I'm Bob Ellison.
Invasive plant people are most familiar with. Kudzu is probably the invasive plant people are most familiar with. What we'd like to see is a stream system that over time grows stronger, is resilient, and supports a healthy ecosystem that we'd like to see here in this part of the world. This project is not unique in Alabama. It's unique in that we got to plan it and work with a lot of community members here in Auburn, but all throughout the state of Alabama, there are similar projects on the coast, in Birmingham, in Huntsville. This is a new opportunity to take a stream and a system that may have been degraded from past neglect or past mistakes and transform it to a more healthy, vibrant, resilient ecosystem.
York, who writes, I've read about a very aggressive invasive plant called hogweed. The plants can get huge sometimes, growing to around 15 feet tall, but what's even worse is that it can be very toxic, much worse than poison ivy, oak, or sumac. Within 15 minutes of contact, skin can become deep red and blistered. In some cases, it can even cause blindness. It is moving into Pennsylvania from New York. Has it invaded central Pennsylvania yet?
That's a good noxious weeds. Invasive plant species and noxious weeds.
and then a coalition formed between the state and private landowners.
When the property was purchased, our partners like the town of Crested Butte, statewide and local funding sources, were willing to join the land trust in taking a risk on this property that was showing a lot of degradation from historic mining.
The land trust also maintains a conservation
proper, which is also an invasive plant that you need to remember to remove from your, which is also an. Are other invasives as well in ottertail colonies, such as curly-leaf pondweed, which is also an invasive plant that you need to remember to remove from your boat that you're using as well. But by law, you.
Thousands. Houghton Lake is the largest inland lake in the state of Michigan, managed for 10,000 acres of the submerged invasive plant Eurasian water milfoil. Removing that system and allowing it to promote native aquatic plant diversity, and you can see the difference from pre-treatment to post-treatment left to right. Another example from the southern U.S. and Florida, management of a key reservoir system in central Florida, Lake Tahoe-Pecaliga, which is one of basically the world's best bass fisheries. And you can see the management of hydrilla. That's about 8-9 feet of water with topped out hydrilla. Hydrilla is considered the worst aquatic weed problem in the world and the U.S. And you can see it's basically completely filled the water column and reduced habitat quality for that bass fishery and many other uses, including floodwater management and other recreational uses. Finally, closer to home, we've had the opportunity in the last few years to assist the state of North Carolina with the effort to eradicate hydrilla from Lake Waccamaw. This 9,000-acre lake is an outstanding resource water of the state of North Carolina, and the system is particularly at risk from hydrilla infestation. And through a direct contract with the state of North Carolina, I've had the opportunity to assist the state in preventing hydrilla infestation of Lake Waccamaw. Even a little bit closer to home, here in the Raleigh-Durham area, the Eno River, one of the headwaters of the Neuse River, is a highly prized, highly used recreational water resource here in this part of the state. Is a home to endangered endemic species and really is a beautiful system. Unfortunately, it has been at risk also with hydrilla, a common theme, and this year a variety of state agencies collaborated to manage hydrilla in a 16-mile stretch of the Eno River, and CPRO is contracted to support that effort. And really had great results. This is an example of a public access area on the Eno River that a few years ago was dominated with surface topped out hydrilla and 2 feet of water or less. And this year you can see a little bit lower water level under drier conditions, but a system that the hydrilla has been removed and a more natural open state has been restored. I would encourage all of you, if you want more general information about the value of managing nuisance invasive plants and problem plants in the aquatic setting and algae, to query this website, the Council of Agricultural Science and Technology. They recently produced a position or issue paper about the benefits of controlling problem aquatic plants and algae. If you just go to their publication search section and type in aquatic, it'll come right up. And it's a good resource describing some of the ecological and economic benefits of managing these conditions.
Service is urging people to check for signs of the invasive Asian longhorn beetle.
This is a devastating insect. It kills trees. Imagine your neighborhood without any trees, and if not detected and if we don't take action soon, that's what might happen.
Signs of infestation include dime-sized exit holes in tree trunks, oval or round scars in the bark, sawdust material on the ground, and dead branches. Call 1-866-702-9938 to report damage, or go to AsianLonghornedBeetle.com. USDA officials were in Santa Fe, New Mexico to kick off National Farmers Market Week. Farmers Market
fish oil in the diets, canola oil, and very interesting research looking at the use of canola oil as a replacement for fish oil in the diets of farm fish. And to do that, we're going to have to up the omega-3 fatty acids, and that will be a GM technology where we actually change the oil profile significantly in canola.
Those attending the Ballarat.
There's a lot of damage. But introduce
backyard up in the Blue Mountains. I didn't plant it myself, but it's a major invasive weed. Very pretty, but causes a lot of damage. But introduced specifically as an ornamental species. Species can also be introduced intentionally for agriculture or aquaculture. This here is bufflegrass. That's a major weed in northern Australia. Interesting thing about this species is that it's very resistant to fire, and it actually promulgates fire in areas where fire once wasn't supposed to be, or didn't naturally occur. And of course, the Pacific oyster is another good example of an intentional introduction. The Pacific oyster was introduced from Japan in the 40s, as far as I'm aware, and it's now competing so incredibly with native oysters, it's causing major problems for the native oyster industry. The black rat is the classic example. This map here, the bits in red, that's where the black rat occurs. Yeah, it's got a very, very wide distribution. It's actually native to these regions here, and it spreads
to the other types of living things that people need. Starlings are an example of what's called an invasive species, a type of animal or plant or other living thing that gets moved to a place where it doesn't belong and causes some harm to the other types of living things that are already there. A species is a specific kind of living thing, and lots of species can only survive in certain places. For example, a spider monkey that lives in the wet rainforest isn't going to be able to live in the dry desert. It wouldn't be able to find the food, water, and shelter it needs to stay alive. But invasive species can survive in places other than where they originally live. And when they move in, they can cause problems for the other types of living things that aren't as flexible. That's what happened with the starlings in North America. About 130 years ago, someone brought a group of starlings to the United States from England, one of the places where they naturally live. Like many other birds, starlings use their beaks to find and get food. But starlings have beaks that are extra strong, and they're so good at getting food that they can often get more food than other kinds of birds. So the group of starlings from England were able to get more food than the other birds that were already living in the United States. And the starlings were also able to get food all winter. The birds that were already here never had to deal with anything like that before. The starlings were getting and eating a lot of the food, and they weren't leaving much for the birds that were already here. When other kinds of birds went to other places to find food, the starlings moved into their nests that they left behind. When it got warmer again and the birds came back, the starlings had taken away the other birds' food and their houses. Then the starlings had babies, and their babies had more babies. The number of starlings grew and grew until there were tons of starlings and a lot less of the birds that were already living there. All this happened because one person brought starlings into the United States. Other times, invasive species move from one place to another accidentally. For example, the brown tree snake was accidentally taken from its home in Australia to a nearby island called Guam. Scientists think the snake might have been hiding on a ship or even on an airplane. Once the snakes got into Guam, they found lots of food to eat, like birds and small lizards. And while there were lots of animals for the snakes to eat, there were not very many animals on Guam that would eat the snakes. So the number of brown tree snakes started to grow. And the more snakes there were, the more birds and other animals got eaten. Some of the birds that were on Guam before those snakes got there are all gone now. So what can we do to stop invasive species? Well, it's not an easy problem to solve. Sometimes just paying attention is enough. For example, people have trained dogs to use their noses to check for tree snakes in ships and planes to make sure they don't accidentally get taken to other islands. Squeak says he doesn't smell any tree snakes in here either. Good to know. In general, people try to be very careful not to take wild animals and other living things from one area and let them go in another. The starlings in North America are probably here to stay, but we can use what we've learned from their story to stop other living things from becoming invasive species. Hey, it sounds like our starling friend took off. Maybe he went to go find the rest of his flock, and it's time for us to get going too. Thanks for joining us. If you want to keep learning and having fun with Squeaks and me, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time here at the Fort.